Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to Fxmaniac. This is Syed Mahmoud Amiri again. Welcome to another really cool tutorial. I'll show you guys how to blow up the Earth. Yeah. And pardon me if you are just getting some, some sort of shaking or anything, or just like I blew up the whole planet, but then somehow you're watching it right now. You're watching the tutorial and you don't feel anything because maybe you're on another planet or something because the Earth is already gone. It's alright. So this is the effect that we're trying to we'll create. We're not trying, we're gonna create this at the end of this tutorial. And before we say anything else, I do want to mention that this tutorial was inspired by CG Geek. So this guy has this tutorial like how to blow up the world with 3D simulation, which goes into a lot of detail actually in Blender. So if you're like a Blender person, human, you can just go ahead and check this out. A lot of cool tips and tricks. So I'm actually inspired by this, and I wanted to do something like this using 3D Studio Max, Tyflow, and Phoenix FD. So this is my result, even though I mean it could have been a lot more better. But yeah, you will get the idea, and you can go ahead and increase the simulation and everything once you get the idea, right? And I have done a lot of trial and error for this effect. So like, I was rendering some short clips of it, just to see if it's working or not, and then just the pieces. And we have some special textures here that we're gonna build at the end. And this one, I did this version, which the camera was zooming out a lot and the lighting was not perfect, but this one is hopefully kind of a final version for you to be able to understand the effect. So yeah, we're going to be creating the explosion, the Earth exploding, and the textures and everything. Alright, so if you're ready, so let's get started. So here I am in 3D Studio Max. Here is our Tyflow scene that we've just built. As you can see that the Earth is actually exploding. So we'll create this, and then we're going to be creating the Phoenix FD fire simulation based off of these pieces. Alright, so here it is. And I was getting this weird problem with Phoenix FD. Even though I've set the grid to be expanding by the smoke, but it was clipping. So I was not sure. So I've done this in this PC of mine, but this version was actually done in a different PC, the office PC that I was working on. So this one didn't have that problem. It was an older version of Phoenix, but this one is actually having this problem with probably a newer version of Phoenix. So I don't know why it is happening, even though I've turned on the the adaptive grid, which hopefully you guys can tell me in the comments, so I'm not like getting the point. Why is it doing that? So alright, enough talking, let's get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm just gonna go reset and don't save. Yes. Alright, so first off we're gonna create the Earth itself. So I'm just gonna be creating like a sphere and move it up, and make sure your unit setup is at least set to centimeters, and 1 unit is 1 centimeter, because we're talking about the whole Earth here and it's pretty big. So you want it to be like big enough, and the units you can even go like with meters, but I'm gonna stick with centimeters here. I'm gonna hit Shift J to hide the selection brackets, hit F4 to see the wireframe, and just go and set this to like 50. That's it. And for the textures, you want to go ahead into Video Copilot, which I'm sure a lot of you do know Video Copilot, and if you don't, then I don't know what the hell you're doing here. Video Copilot is one of those sites where it's just everybody should know. Everybody in the CG and design community should know it, and I believe you do. So they have a tutorial called the Ultra 3D Earth with a free OR plugin, so you can just go ahead and download the textures, and once you do, you're gonna have this compressed file with all these textures. And I went ahead and combined the clouds with the diffuse in Photoshop to get something like this. So I'm going to be using this for the diffuse texture, and we have all the bump and normal and everything else. Alright, so I'm going to go into 3D Studio and hit M, for the material editor to open up, and I am going to be using V-Ray, so set my render engine to V-Ray. The reason I'm setting up the rendering first because I don't want to do it, it's better to set it at first. Alright, okay, and if you already know this, you can just go ahead and skip it. So I'm just gonna drag the diffuse for now and just drop it onto this sphere that we're going to be applying the we didn't have a material, right? So V-Ray, diffuse, just link it here, and yeah, just apply this to the earth, and now we have our earth. So we're going to be adding the other textures later. So now for the Tyflow part, I'm just going to go into the Tyflow, and yeah, and I'm just going to be creating a sphere in the middle of this sphere, and this will act as a particle source because we're going to be emitting particles off of it and using those particles to move to kind of disturb and explode the earth from the inside, right? So this is our sphere, and I'm just going to go into the Tyflow editor and just create new birth operator and add a position object operator. And for the position object, I'm just going to pick that small sphere. So that's it. So now we have some particles over there, and we want to set the birth to repeater, and we want the repeat interval to be like 10 frames. So now every 10 frames we have new particles getting born, right? So if you see this, yeah, 10 and then 10 and then 200 particles each time. The other thing I want to do is I want to use a surface force. So I'm going to be using this exact object, but I don't want the attraction, so I'm just going to right click to make it 0. I'm going to go into the normals and increase the force to 1 centimeter. So now you have every 10 frames you have these particles bursting out of that sphere, and 1 centimeter is a little too much, so I'm going to go with 0.2. yeah, just like that. And I don't want the frame duration to be 10, I just want it to be 3, so we have like 3 frames, just like that. And maybe 10 frames is a little too less, so I'm just going to go with 50. So we have 2 bursts, 1 burst, and then after 50 frames we have another burst of particles. And we do want to delete them, we don't want them to go on forever. So after like 30 frames I just want them to be deleted. So I'm just going to add a time test and just go to frame 30 and hit the tab and add a delete operator, just link it there. So after 30 frames they're going to be dead, just like that. Alright, or you can go with event age. Yeah, so now we're getting our bursts again, right? So this is going to act as a an explosion to hopefully explode the main earth particles. Alright, so we don't want to see them, just turn the display off. Now we want our earth, so I'm going to create a new Tyflow. I'm just going to add a birth object and going to here. So we have this, and I'm just going to go height selection, just like that. And the other thing we want to do is fracture this, so I'm going to go with Voronoi fracture, and I'm hitting tab, by the way, to bring up the search bar for the operators. You can go ahead and drag it from here as well. So I want to break it to like 500 pieces, but then I want to turn on count relative to property. So it is basically going to be breaking it based on volume, so it's just going to give it a lot more detail. So 500 for me was the number that I've used in the original example, and I'm just going to pick the Tyflow and hit M. And there is a very important thing here before you do anything else. You want to go into because we want the inner pieces, so the outer pieces is the earth texture. The inside is going to be some hot sort of lava texture that we're going to build. So you want to go ahead into 3D Studio and go into Voronoi fracture, and into the fractures I'm going to go to material, override cap material ID and set it to 3. So now if I go hit M, and I'm just going to be building another I'm just going to take a multi-sub object material. So for the first ID or the second actually. I'm just going to put the earth, and for the other one, for the third one, I'm just going to put another VR material and just take into the diffuse, just take a general noise texture, and I'm just going to go here and change the color white to orangish, sort of a lava texture, and I'm just going to make it fractal, set the high and low to 0.5 and set the size to like 1. Want it to be very low, okay, or set the high to 0.6. So now we have this, or this one to 0.7, the low value. So now it's a little too much, 0.6, 0.7, just like that. Yeah. Now if I set this noise material to the third material of this multi-sub object, and I just want to go into set the number and set it to 3. Okay, and I'm going to apply this material to our Tyflow, our new Tyflow. So now it's there, but then once we explode them, the inside is going to be this material because we've already set the ID to 3, and I'm hoping that you get it right. So the inside particles, once we explode them, are going to be ID 3, and they're going to be this noise texture. Alright, so now it's time to explode this. I'm just going to add a particle force right here, and I'm just going to pick the Tyflow, which is, I don't know how you just hit H and select the Tyflow, pick. So now if you go here, it is going to be exploding. You see right here, and you can see that the inside pieces are actually you know, that black material, but they're too big, so I'm just gonna turn the size down to like 0.2 or 0.1 even 0.06. So now we have a lot of them. So now we have it just like this, and you can go ahead and make it a little bit more brighter. We are going to give it some self-illumination as well. So you just want to go ahead and link this texture, or just go to the material, copy it from the diffuse, paste it into the self-illumination paste instance, and increase the multiplier to like 5. So now we're gonna have, you know, a lot of these particles just like that. Or you can just go ahead and give them a color also as well, so just not like lime but orangish yellow, just like that. So now they are going to be a lot of, you know, they're going to be bright and they're going to be self-illuminating. So yeah, but the problem here is you see that they're just exploding in a very unnatural way. So the thing we can do is that, first off, I'm just going to add a physics shape, because that's what's going to do. It's going to make the particles sort of collide with each other, but then you have two things that you want to turn off. So now you see they're just falling down. It would be crazy, because there's nothing, there's no surface on space that the Earth can fall into. So this is a very I mean, very unusual effect. But the thing you want to do is you want to go ahead into the Tyflow physics settings, and you want to turn off default gravity and the ground collider. So we're not going to be having any gravity because we're in space, and the only force that is going to be acting upon these particles is going to be that particle force. So just go into the time configuration, turn off real time. So now you see they are exploding in a very, very you know, natural way. Not that we have seen an Earth explosion before, but it is much, much more better, right? So just like that, like this. So you can now go ahead and add some lights and everything, but I think it is already looking pretty cool. I'm just gonna add a sunlight. Go ahead here, V-Ray sun, and just drag one out here. And you don't want the environment, so no. And you can go ahead and basically select the Tyflow, add a mesh operator to it so that we can see it. So now I'm going to 3D Studio again, run the V-Ray IPR, and hopefully we can see it, right? Just like that. I mean, it's a little too bright, but you can go ahead and turn it down the intensity 0.1, 0.02, just like that. But once we add our Phoenix FD particles, they are going to look very nice. Okay. Maybe our particles are just a little too bright or something. If I go back here, yeah, I think the light is a little, we have to turn down the intensity, 0.05. Now I think they are looking fine. But then the thing about these pieces, they're gonna light up, of course, with the Phoenix FD particles, with the Phoenix FD smoke and everything. But then you can turn up the GI to like 20 so that they are sort of shining or burning hot. Even 50 you can go. So now they're really sort of having this hot color. And yeah, so now they're gonna be burning hot. But then the thing is, once we add the Phoenix FD smoke, they are going to illuminate this in, and you have this fiery sort of burning texture, which is really nice. So it's going to be fine once we add the smoke. So the next thing we want to do is, now that we have done this, we want to set up a camera angle, just like this. Control C, zoom out a little bit. And I'm hoping that you are following me up, because it's just, we need to do some things in order to get this right. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is export these as objects. So I'm just going to add an export particles here, and 0 to 100 as objects, and move down here and export particles. So now we're going to be having a lot of particles just exporting here. So we have like 3,965, almost 4,000 pieces. So I'm going to hit yes, and it is going to be exporting it. Okay, so now our export is done. You can just go ahead and turn this off. And now we have our objects in the sense of each of them particles are now an individual sort of object that you can select and do all sorts of things with it. So what we want to do is go here and go into Phoenix FD and drag out a fire and smoke sim. So just this much, covering the earth pretty much. We want to give it some initial room. And then we're gonna, of course, we're gonna set it to adaptive, so it's gonna expand along with explosion. So the thing I did was I just selected some random, pieces. So just select these, control select these from the areas that it is actually like moving and exploding. So just like that, probably a few of these and one of these and these and these. And I just made like, you can go ahead forward and select some more pieces, but that is fine. So I went ahead and created a selection set, so it's going to be the explosion. So now we have the set, so every time I click on a set we have these pieces, right? So you can select more pieces, but I've already selected like 68 objects. Then I want to go into helpers, go to Phoenix FD and add a PHX source, just like that, fire source. And I'm going to go into add and add all these. You can click in this selection set and pick. So they're going to be added. Oh, we don't want the Phoenix FD grid. We've just selected it by mistake, so we don't want that. So we canceled it. Outgoing velocity 10. Everything is fine. And in the grid settings, I'm just going to go ahead over this quickly, because this is not something. I mean, I must have played around with this for like what, a week or 10 days. I mean, I was not getting some results, and I had to play around with it, and I had to render it out every time to see if it is working or not. So it took me a while. But the thing I'm going to be showing you guys is the things that I've done. So you don't want to mess up right now with your grid, because you want to do some initial tests. And the other thing you want to do is, of course, turn on the adaptive grid to be the smoke. So as the smoke is growing, the grid is going to grow with it. And you want to turn off gravity. You want to go ahead, give it a bit of a large scale look and some randomness. Okay, I've set the quality to 12. You can go set it to 16. 2 steps per frame minimum, right? And you want to go ahead and set it output space for it to save, and then that's basically it. So then you're going to go ahead and simulate. And the other thing, you don't want to start the simulation from the first frame, of course. So I just want to stop it. I'm going to go into simulation, start it from like maybe like 10 frames. So let's see where this thing starts. So it starts at around frame 15. So I'm going to set it to 15 to 100 because we're going to have some initial frames to like breathe, right? So now we're going to go ahead and simulate it and let it run and see a low quality sim and see how it's looking. And then when you like it, you can go ahead and increase the quality. So just want to go ahead and let it sim. Alright, so I've went ahead and opened up my original scene, and you can see the smoke is pretty low res because I've set it so. So you can go and go into the preview. You can turn on the GPU preview, so it's going to show up in the viewport, but then I've set the detail reduction to 7, so if I go lower you can see how high quality of a smoke that is. So you can see it's pretty high quality. But then the problem that I haven't even figured out right now, as I mentioned in the beginning, is that it's even though I've set it to adaptive grid, but it is clipping. So maybe you guys can tell me why that is happening. But in this version of Phoenix actually, but the version that I did this one is it didn't have that problem. So I don't know why. Maybe it's a bug or something, but I don't know. All right. So final touches. You can go ahead and increase your grid resolution to get these nice detailed smokes. I have like 28 million cells, which is pretty low, so you can go like twice or thrice above and set it to sim. And you can go ahead into the earth textures. You can add the glossiness, the bump, and the illumination maps to make it more natural. And I've just added like a camera movement, zooming out. You can add some stars and everything, but you get the effect, right? So hopefully you've enjoyed this tutorial and learned something from it and given you some ideas. And again, big thanks to CG Geek for the inspiration for this tutorial. And you can download the texture from Video Copilot. And here's my my channel, Fxmaniac, and our music channel if you want to check it out. Alright, so this was today's tutorial. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something from it. Till the next one, enjoy working.